Welcome back to an Opportunity Podcast, where we dive into the topics that shape our relationships and help us grow together. Today, we're tackling a topic that is often a game changer in relationships: ultimatums. We've all heard the phrase, "it's my way or the highway," but what happens when that highway leads straight to an ultimatum? Are ultimatums a way to set healthy boundaries, or do they drive a wedge between partners? Let's get into it and explore when ultimatums can be helpful, when they cross the line, and how to navigate them without losing yourself or your relationship. Hi, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Randolph. What is an ultimatum? So, to define an ultimatum in the context of a relationship, it is literally my way or the highway, right? It's forcing your partner to do one thing or do another with no leeway, no other option, no way out. It's forcing a result.
Yeah, I would say that any ultimatum that I've seen has been a result of a need being unmet for so long that you feel the need to make something, this is the way it's going to be, or we need to discuss how to move on from each other. And there are a lot of people doing ultimatums when it comes to wanting to get married or moving in together or telling family about certain things. Like, there's a lot of different things that would kind of bridge into an ultimatum.
Yeah, what brought this up is Lauren and I were watching 90 Day Fiancé, and an ultimatum was placed. I don't think I can remember the names of the two.
It was Marcel and Anna.
Okay. And the ultimatum was that he tell his family about her family, or the prospective marriage just ends. The relationship just ends. And of course, that forces him to make a decision. Because it involves his family, his decision unfortunately caused them to separate. And this is kind of, I believe, where all ultimatums lead.
I agree. I've mentioned it in the Reddit community a couple of times, and in a lot of the posts that I've written giving people advice, is that I would say 99% of relationships that have resorted to ultimatums are not going to last, or are going to take some serious work in order to get to that point of being okay again, because it puts in so many things, so much doubt, uncertainty, pressure that's already there. And especially for that 90 Day Fiancé episode, there's already so much pressure of, we only have a certain amount of time. We learned in that episode that if he leaves, he can't come into the US again, and that changes everything as far as like her putting in that ultimatum.
It was interesting to see the results of that ultimatum. And it's not setting a boundary, an ultimatum. It's causing that boundary to push your significant other away. And that's why some people might believe that an ultimatum enforces or sets an actual boundary when it doesn't, because it's forcing a result. A boundary doesn't force a result, it only permits certain results.
I think another distinction, and something that you and I have talked about many, many, many times, is the difference between a need and a preference.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a difference between I need it / I demand it, and I would prefer that this were the way that it's happened.
Yeah.
There are a lot of conversations that we have had in trying to understand each other's threshold for what is a need and what is a preference, and making sure that it's not moving into a need, isn't moving into a demand.
Yeah, and like what happened with Marcel, her preference and him telling his family was ultimately a need, and for him, it rolled into now I have to make a decision, instead of, well, let's define your preference here, and let's talk about the actual risks of me telling my family, because she gave the ultimatum thinking that he would choose one way, and when he didn't, that really upset her and caused the result of him leaving, and it was a situation that I feel could have been avoided because she burnt a bridge instead of just finding another route across that bridge. She cut off any possibility of any other result happening with that ultimatum.
And this really did spark a pretty long conversation about all of this
Hmm.
because there were so many different things that the show and him, I'm not really sure if the show doesn't give the information or he doesn't give the information or she doesn't know. I'm not sure, but there were so many different things of we don't understand the culture. I
Hmm.
believe Marcel is from Turkey, so we don't understand the culture of the expectations that children have from their parents. We don't understand any of that. So it's hard for us to sit and say, like, oh, I can't believe that he's choosing his family over her or whatever the circumstances are. And I think it moved into the conversation of why would she do that? Why did she feel that she needed to do that? I did bring up her age. I think that that is a factor in this. She does have three children, and unfortunately, we live in a society that women are seen as less than for having children and not being with the children's father, which I don't personally think that has any bearing on anything, but I do know that in the show she's 38 and she has three children and she's technically single. I know that she's engaged, but she's not married yet. And I think that there's a part of her that sees that as this is my last chance. I love this man. He's great. I want to make this work. Why doesn't he want to make this work with me? Instead of it being so much bigger than something like that. It's his obligations to his family. It's him trying to do everything in his own time. And I think that it became a self-fulfilling prophecy because she pushed for the ultimatum when, like you said, it didn't have to be one way or it's nothing. There was a middle ground that could have been found. I think that she was so much in her emotions and feeling a little bit like desperation. Am I right in that kind of feeling?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think I mentioned last night that there could easily have been a situation where I think they could have their family and the kids can be involved, and his side of the family just isn't there. It's kind of up to each individual what that looks like and if they are comfortable living with that. I know a lot of families out there, they're struggling with their interpersonal relationships and they're not really a big part of the picture when it comes to the significant other's family. So, unfortunately, I really do think that it could have been the case where they have their happily ever after, and the ultimatum did completely sever that possibility one way or the other. No matter how it would have went, it kind of really drawn one result.
I agree. I really do. It was really a weird experience to be the watcher because there was that point of me thinking, "Oh, this is something that he's done to himself. I don't feel bad for him. He could have told his family originally and this wouldn't have been an issue, or he could have made the decision." There's a lot of things that could have been done differently in that instance.
Hmm.
And I think that it was still very difficult to watch because you're seeing two people that clearly care about each other, clearly love each other, clearly want for it to work. And it was a situation that because she decided this is what I need in order to get married, and him wanting to oblige that and make her happy and be there for her in that capacity, it pushed him into a place that was, okay, I knew that they were going to be upset. I didn't realize they were going to be this upset. They want me to come back to Turkey. I don't have a choice but to go back to Turkey now.
Yeah, yeah, and I really want to explore ultimatums versus boundaries because if she would have set the boundary at the beginning, before everything happened, before he came to the US, it could have been something that maybe was talked over and was introduced to the family. That way, there was a little bit more room to grow and to warm up and for each party to know each other. And setting that boundary in the beginning would have been more helpful because then an ultimatum wouldn't have even been brought up. There would have been no need for an ultimatum because her boundaries were clearly set.
Yeah, I agree. I do. In this specific instance with Marcel and Anna, I don't think that it would have mattered because he was pretty clear in Turkish culture, women that have children that aren't married, it becomes an issue of someone in her situation in Turkey is not seen as desirable when here it is a lot more common. So I think that for him, it was something that was very clear that, hey, I'm interested in this relationship. I'm interested in you. I'm interested in how that we're going to move forward. This is not something that I can budge on as far as like how I feel about things, because my culture, my family won't understand, and I care about you and I want to see how we work, etc. I'm sure that even if she would have put in her boundaries, he would have had an issue with it. So I think in this instance, there really wasn't a way, unless she was the one that was willing to budge. And it was her choosing between the man that she loves and keeping her children hidden.
Yeah, I think the nature of ultimatums is that it restricts results or restricts outcome. And so let's take like a more casual example of video games, for instance. If your partner tells you or you tell your partner that the video games have to stop or the relationship won't continue, that's an ultimatum. When a boundary can be set in place that says you can play video games, but this is the boundary of the time that you can, or this is the boundary of the time that you can't. And with boundaries like that, it becomes a lot more of a compromise. And I think we all know that compromise can lead to success in relationships, and restricting results does not lead to success.
Absolutely. Having the clear set boundaries and having the conversations up front is absolutely how you keep ultimatums from happening, because you're driving home. This is what I need. This is what makes me feel seen. This is what's important to me. And if it were something like video games, it would be more or less saying, I need X, Y, and Z instead of this, where the boundary becomes less about the games and more about what you're needing instead. Because most of the time, I feel like those instances come up when you're having a need that's unmet. And instead of saying, I feel like I'm not getting enough time, or you're not valuing me, or whatever the need is, that isn't being met, but it's easier to say, stop the games or I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that as far as situations go where there is a need for ultimatums, it could be because of just lack of communication. It could be that your needs fluctuate every day, of course, and you're just not communicating your needs, or your partner's not communicating their lack of need, or, communication can fix a lot of that feeling that you need ultimatums.
Yeah, I agree. It comes from a place of frustration and misunderstanding and feeling like this is the last thing that I can do. You haven't listened to this and this and this. Instead of, I think there are instances where someone could feel like an ultimatum is necessary.
Hmm.
When you've tried to communicate, you've tried, or everything that you can think of to get your needs across, and getting someone to understand where you're coming from, and those needs continuously are unmet, where it becomes something where it's like, I don't know what else to do. I care about this person, I want to be with this person, but this instance is something that I'm out of my depth. I've done everything that I can think of, and the only thing I can think of is putting this ultimatum out. And that is the issue of ultimatums leading to the end of a relationship.
Going with the video game example, do you think that the person playing video games continuing that activity in spite of a boundary placed is a result of them not communicating their needs?
Absolutely. I think it could be something where the person says, hey, this is how I decompress. I need to do 30 minutes after I get off work, or having some sort of a meter of this is what I need, this is reasonable. And then you guys coming across of you saying, hey, I need X amount of time. And the person saying, well, I need X amount of time of this. And then you sit down and find the compromise where your needs are being met of being able to decompress, and their needs are being met of having quality time with you.
Yeah, I would agree. I think communication is the key when it comes to avoiding these harmful ultimatums. And don't get me wrong, all ultimatums are harmful, some more than others, though. And I think communication really does prevent it from getting to that point. I wouldn't say there is a healthy ultimatum or a helpful ultimatum.
I agree. I think that there's a lot of things that might seem helpful in the moment, but lead to worse things. And the perception or the trust level, I just don't think that there's any sort of thing that is long term helpful. If it is short term, it might just be a band aid. And let's say that it was something that Marcel went ahead and stayed.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he went past it, he knew that he needed to go back to his family. He said, no, I'm going to stay with you. You put in this ultimatum. Then it sets a precedent of, okay, well, all I have to do is do this. And this is what's going to happen. Instead of it being something where, hey, this person is needing something.
Yes, I agree. And going with the video game example, what if your partner does stop playing video games and they become depressed, and that depression bleeds into how they normally treat you or show affection to you? That's not improving the relationship. You could notice that and it be something that can't be reversed very easily. So instead of that ultimatum forming and your partner choosing you over video games completely, a compromise would be better, because you wouldn't want your partner to give up something that they love and then become depressed or treat you differently or view you differently. You would want your partner to compromise on something they love. That way, there's the middle ground met where you both are still happy and one person isn't giving up more than they feel comfortable with.
I agree. I think it also sets something into place where, let's say that, sticking with the video game example, the person stops. It could turn into, are you staying off the games because you want to or because I asked you to? And it turns into a trust issue instead of, well, hey, I did this for you, you should be happy kind of thing. I think it breeds mistrust and resentment and things like that that don't need to be in the relationship at all. And all of that could have been stopped by not resorting to an ultimatum.
Yeah, I agree. And others can also view it as a control tactic. If your significant other has friends that they usually game with or has family that they usually talk to, and an ultimatum was put in place that they have to choose you over that specific activity, it could really lead to others being concerned because it might be viewed as a control tactic.
Absolutely. I think changing gears to a higher stakes ultimatum than a video game, there are implications that obviously, when you're talking about whether you play video games or not, can depression happen and all of the negative things? Yes. But when you're talking about an ultimatum, when it comes to marriage, moving in, like the big hot ticket items of your life.
How about talking to your ex or talking to like other women in general?
What do you mean?
What if your partner goes to you and says you have to either stop talking to your ex or our relationship is over? What about an ultimatum like that?
The relationship is over already, in my opinion. Like, if it's not over, it's nearing over because there's something that is an insecurity that's there. There's something that hasn't been talked about. And there's something that's been brewing for a while because someone does not walk up to you with an ultimatum and it's the first time that they've thought something.
Right.
It's something that's been sitting there and bubbling over, and they've dropped it and tried to pick it back up and dropped it again. And they're to the point where they're completely fed up with whatever that action is. They're fed up with you talking to your ex, playing video games, talking about getting married when they're not ready for it, etc.
So, what if the ex was an important factor in their life? What if they have a child together and they are still approached with the ultimatum that I have to cut off ties with my ex or lose my relationship? How do you think that individual should handle that?
I think it should be something that is being respectful of how someone is feeling, trying to dive into why they're saying that. Where is this coming from? What has happened? And understanding all of that, and then saying, I want to give you what you need, but this is why this is important. What can I do that will make you more sure of us more sure of me, make you feel better about how this is moving forward or how my relationship with this ex is, and moving forward in a constructive way that is, I want to make sure that you're seen and understood in my priority, but this person is important to me and I'm not ready to let that go. And I don't want to let that go because you're asking me to. I want to make that decision myself as to when I'm ready to let that go, if I'm ready to let that go, and not letting it turn into that. So I would personally sit down, have the conversation of what's happening, why are you upset? Did I do something? Did they do something? Is there something that you're not telling me? And then here's why this is this way. I want to meet you in the middle. What is the middle?
Yeah, I agree. That would be a good way to approach it. And for me personally, you could go as far as saying that your partner should be more involved in the communication with you and your ex, if that's the case, or vice versa. Because I don't think you should view someone being more involved in communication, whether that's looking at texts or, just putting it on speaker so you can hear the conversation. I don't think that should be viewed as an invasion of privacy. That should be viewed as not enforcing insecurities. And if you do feel like it's an invasion of privacy and you just don't want to do that, then I would say take a step back, go to your partner, and express that you are not willing to commit fully to what it takes to make this relationship work. Because ultimately, that is what you're doing.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is turning to that side of, I absolutely want this and there's no moving, is just not healthy. And I think that if your partner comes to you and says, hey, I need to be involved, if that's going to be the case, I want to be sure of what's going on, I'm feeling uncomfortable about this, I want to better understand the dynamics of your relationship so that I can fully wrap my head around what this means for me and our relationship and for you, then if you're having an issue with that, then I think you should sit down with yourself and figure out, why are you uncomfortable? Why does that make you feel some type of way? Because I know for me, if you want to look at my phone, go for it. If you want me to have a phone call on speakerphone, okay. It does that. None of that bothers me because I don't have anything to hide. And we've created a spot where we really are full disclosure, of there not being a weird gap of, hey, put that on speakerphone, and I think about, oh, what is he trying to hear? Why is this going to turn into a conflict or whatever it might be? It's just, hey, he's interested in this conversation and I want him to be part of it if that's what he wants.
Yeah, I'm sure something can be said that people can look at it as a trust issue, that someone wants to be more involved in a topic or in a conversation with an ex or anything like that. And I would say to that that if you view it as a trust issue, you should talk with your partner and try to understand if they trust you and if they're just insecure. Because viewing it as a trust issue is one thing, but viewing it in a more healthy light, that there's insecurities with your partner, is much more beneficial to the relationship.
Absolutely. This is an instance where if your person is feeling insecure, that it's an easy fix and you should want to do that. Or if it is a trust issue and there's been infidelity in the past, or there's been online cheating of any form, or whatever the circumstances are, that you as a partner should want to give that to your partner, to
You
be
should,
able to say, hey, I've messed up, or you've messed up, or someone has messed up in your past, and I want to heal that for you. So if you're feeling insecure about a previous relationship and you're bringing it into ours, yes, I want to have that conversation of, why are you bringing past things into our current relationship? But in that moment, my job, in my opinion, is to take care of you. And if taking care of you means having you listen to a phone call or read a text message if you have questions about things or whatever it is, then I want to be able to do that for you. And I don't think that's an unreasonable request on your part.
yeah, and you are great with that. I appreciate all the effort that you put into that. front of our relationship. I really believe it is so much more beneficial to people if they look at these topics as, okay, there's insecurity, how can I help with that? Instead of the more egotistical approach of, well, he just doesn't trust me and he needs to trust me more, or she has trust issues with me. And you can look at it as, your partner is projecting. But what you do with that projection is really going to influence your relationship moving forward. You can see that projection, call them out, and shame them for it, which of course we don't recommend. So you can look at it as a projection and you can call them out on that and shame that, but of course that's not what we recommend. What we recommend is that you see that projection and help your partner through it. Rather that's compromising on your privacy or just talking them through their emotional insecurities. Any healthy way like that will be much more beneficial to your relationship than simply recognizing and shaming.
Absolutely. I do think that specifically for us, it was something where those moments I could have been angry that you were feeling a certain way, but instead of that, I took how you were feeling, realized that it wasn't about me, and that has been a journey of mine of understanding that your emotions, they're not always a result of my actions, that they are sometimes yours, and there are things that you can handle. This isn't about me trying to micromanage your feelings and stop you from feeling things. It's about, hey, you're clearly having an issue with this. I'm bringing it to your attention because I care about you and I want to make sure that this issue isn't bleeding into our relationship, causing us issues in the future or now. And I would rather bring that to your attention. And I think that for a lot of people, that could turn into, oh, they're just nitpicking at me. They're just finding all of my flaws.
Yeah, it could turn into that. I would say it's up to the individual how to proceed in this circumstance, but to take away a main point that should stick in your head is recognize when your partner is projecting, but do not shame it.
Absolutely. It should be something that you should be able to notice it, acknowledge it, and I think it should be something where you're able to acknowledge it and try to work through it instead of avoiding it or shaming. I think all of those hot button things only cause more issues instead of a big argument turning into a really positive experience. I think for us specifically, we've had a lot of conversations that have bridged into bigger conversations. But at the end of them, we might be tired and a little exhausted from it, but we feel like we're better and stronger because of it. We don't feel beat down by the other person.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's okay to feel like you're mentally exhausted and that your emotions are worn out and then continue the topic into the next day because that's just clearing up more things for your partner. If your partner knows your limit better, that's all the better for your relationship in general. As we wrap up our discussion on ultimatums, it's essential to recognize that these situations, while sometimes feeling unavoidable, can often be preempted with clear communication and understanding. Rather than waiting until you're backed into a corner. It's crucial to address concerns early on, establish boundaries, and openly discuss needs with your partner. By doing so, you can avoid the harshness of an ultimatum and instead find a middle ground that works for both of you. We've got even more to share on this topic, including real-life scenarios where ultimatums might arise and how we'd handle them to prevent ultimatums altogether. Coming soon to our Patreon, these insights and advice will be available exclusively to our subscribers. By joining, you'll gain access to exclusive episodes, early releases, behind-the-scenes content, and our private Discord community where you can connect with us and other listeners. Your support helps us create even more valuable content and invest more into the podcast and into you.
Thank you for joining us in this deep dive into the complexities of ultimatums in relationships. We hope that our discussion has given you some valuable insights and tools to navigate these tricky situations. Remember, Relationships thrive on understanding, communication, and compromise, never ultimatums. If this episode resonated with you, we encourage you to share it with someone who might benefit from it. Text one of your friends in your life and convince them to listen to an Opportunity podcast because you believe it could truly help them. Don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep communicating, keep growing, and remember that there's always an opportunity for a healthier relationship.